What's up everybody, Brandon here from Gearist. And today we're going to be taking an in-depth look at the Fresh Foam Gobi from New Balance. To add just a little bit of context to this, the New Balance Fresh Foam Zante, this shoe right here, was and remains one of our favorite shoes of the past couple years, both versions 1 and 2. The shoe we're looking at today, this guy right here, the Gobi, is a shoe that is meant to bring the fun, agility, pop, and ride from this shoe that happens to be a road shoe to the trail. So I'm really excited, based on how much we liked this, to see exactly what this shoe could bring to the party, so let's get started. You know, we don't often see shoes that are truly trail and road hybrids. Of course, there are shoes that you can use on both of those. I have plenty of friends that use the Kinvara, for instance, from Saucony on a lot of the trail runs that they do. But this shoe right here is not only appropriate for some of those applications, but it is also advertised as a shoe by New Balance that is a hybrid. Starting with the outsole of this guy, it is that pretty typical hexagonal pattern that we've become used to in the New Balance Fresh Foam line. And again, you can kind of see that same sort of pattern here on the New Balance Fresh Foam Zante. We've also seen this in earlier trail iterations of the Fresh Foam line, like the 980 or what became the Hyero from New Balance and things like that, where it's that hexagonal pattern that's actually relatively flat that keeps kind of directionally faced lugs depending on whether you're ascending or descending. This also appears to be made of a full contact, as we can see there, which is one of the trademarks, or hallmarks rather, of the Fresh Foam line, full contact blown rubber outsole. New Balance calls this whole setup their new AT tread. Now, if we look at it, you can see, I'll kind of try to hold it like this, it might be a little hard, that the only real thing that makes these not totally flat is the fact that on the front half of the shoe, the back side of the lug is a little bit raised like this, and likewise on the rear half, the front, the leading edge, if you will, is a little bit raised or lowered depending on which way you're holding the shoe to account for ascending or descending. Before we talk about anything else with this outsole, I really want to talk about traction. So on smoother, groomed trail, single track, things like this thing grips like crazy, does a fantastic job. I'll talk more about that in the ride section, but it likes to go fast. It's a very poppy shoe and actually very reminiscent of the Fresh Foam Zante, which it's pretty much built exactly like that shoe, as we'll get into in a second. Now, when I got into more technical terrain, and not necessarily just rockier in terms of like loose rock and things like that, but rocks that were more angled, that were more slick rock kind of thing, that kind of just was a flat plane of rock. The traction on this did okay, but it wasn't excellent. The rubber is not hyper sticky, so if you're looking for something to do some scrambling or something like that, or you are like our buddy Nick Combs who likes to go and climb the flat irons, things like that, this might not be the right shoe for that, because this rubber is not the stickiest thing out there. But again, I really don't think that it's meant for that. This is that hybrid shoe, so there's no real reason to put a super technical rubber on it. Now, as for durability, the durability on this is okay. This is a road trail hybrid shoe, as New Balance advertises, and in such cases that this holds up pretty well on the road. When you start getting onto things where it's really going to wear down, or even on road, if you're somebody who slides into the ground as opposed to landing on the ground, which believe me are two vastly different things, you might see some accelerated wear. I have about 60 miles on this shoe, and you can see a pretty distinct wear pattern that comes right up here and then just kind of collapses, not collapses, but kind of goes toward the lateral side just a little bit, because I tend to be very neutral to supinating. So I'd really be curious to see how this holds up over, say, 250 miles. I think 250 miles, you've got no problem. Even 300 miles, if your gait is fairly clean, no problem. But I will say that I think if this rubber had a bump in quality, to say something like a carbon rubber, something like that, then not only would you see a bump in the durability of it, but you would also see kind of a better grip of the shoe, and that would be a welcome addition. Moving into the midsole of this guy, this is one of the places where the kind of tie to the New Balance Zante, Fresh Foam Zante version 2 in particular, is really the most obvious. Not only because of the fact that it is built basically geometrically the same, not basically, it is the same geometrically speaking, but the feel is the same. It's a very consistent, very bouncy, very playful underfoot feel, which I really like. Now, where this is not wonderful, and again, I hesitate to leave this as a knock on the shoe itself because I don't necessarily think it's meant for this, is when you do hit that rocky or more technical terrain. In cases like that, the fact that this does not have a rock plate is very obvious. You've got this fresh foam underfoot, right? That's nice and playful and bouncy and soft, and the ground feel is spectacular, but that means that when rocks come to play, you're going to feel them. I took this on some longer runs, over 8 miles, that were on very rocky and technical terrain, which a lot of shoes, even with rock plates, would have had a hard time with. And at the end of it, I just felt kind of beat up. It's not the knock on the shoe, because again, I really feel like on groomed trails, this thing takes off. I mean, it's really amazing. But on that type of stuff, it's not really going to be the shoe for that, in my opinion. Moving into the upper of the Fresh Foam Gobi, this actually holds over the ethos, the look and feel a little bit of the Zante, and that is that it's got very sleek lines. You can see there, they're the same shape, really. It's a very slick looking upper, very close to the foot, feels really great on. It's a dual layer mesh, each layer with a fine mesh backing, and each of those layers gets progressively tighter woven so that by the time you get to the inside, it's going to keep out any and all debris, with the exception of some very, very fine dust, which is pretty much a blanket statement for almost all shoes that aren't really waterproof. The support structure on the upper is made from New Balance's Phantom Fit technology. There's not much give in this fit. You know, you may recall, and especially the Zante version 1 and even a little bit in version 2, there was some stretch in the upper. There's definitely a difference between those and this. This has no give with this Phantom Fit area right here because you really don't want it. You know, if you get on off-camber terrain or something where the shoe and the foot inside is going to be tilted like this, you want the shoe that's going to be able to lock down and really give you some security, a secure feeling inside, not like you're sliding all over the place. And this accomplishes that very well. Another piece that seems to be kind of a part, like an appendant part of that Phantom Fit technology, is this stuff that we see here up in the toe protect. Now this is just kind of a rubber compound material that starts here at, you guessed it, the toe to protect the toes, as it's called, toe protect. But then it also extends almost as a full rand all the way around the shoe. We can see that it comes back here. There's a slight seam in it right there, a slight break in it right there. But all in all, it's going to add a little more durability, kind of security, and good solid grounded feeling as the midsole and the upper kind of mesh together around the strobel construction area. Internally, this feels really great on a barefoot. I don't run barefoot, but when I've worn this just kind of kicking around barefoot, it feels very, very nice. I will say something interesting is that New Balance advertises this as having booty construction. Now, I consider booty construction to have almost a separate internal piece in there that you feel is separate from the rest of the upper. You feel like your foot is being hugged by that. This is not that at all. It doesn't feel like that to me at all. There is a gusseted tongue that is gusseted right up to about that eyelet there on both the lateral and the medial side. But as far as a booty construction, I disagree with that assessment. It doesn't mean that it's not a great fit. I find that to be really comfortable, but booty construction feels like a bit of a misnomer. The foam on the tongue and the collar is actually really nice. Not too much, not overly stuffed, nice and densely packed in there, very comfortable. And it even on a barefoot, it feels really, really good. Now, as we move toward the heel counter, take a look at that real quick. I'm going to hold up the Zante. You can see the Zante, super flexible. This, much more rigid, which is good and very necessary because this makes it more appropriate for getting on that off camber, more technical, or just basically trail terrain is what it's for. The upper of the shoe has been really great for me. I've really enjoyed it. It's very, very comfortable, even over longer runs. There are really no durability issues with the exception of one that I have noticed, and that is that right here, you can see where the outsole kind of comes up over the toe. There's a little bit of pull down of that rubber. Now, I can't be sure if this is a one-off thing or if this is someplace where I picked a rock, which I don't really notice any damage on the toe protect area, so I don't think that's the case. And it also doesn't affect the performance of the shoe, so it's not something that really bugs me. However, I am pointing it out to you guys so that you know this is a little bit of a DLAM issue right here. But again, I don't know if this is a one-off thing just in my pair of shoes or what it is, but it doesn't bother me or affect performance. As for fit, the sizing of this guy, first off, is great for me. It fits my size 11 foot perfectly. However, our buddy Sam over at Road Trail Run said that he did have to go up by a half size, but largely credited to that to kind of some of the materials not having much give, the way that a road shoe might have a little bit of stretch or give, as I talked about with the Zante. So be sure you're trying this on, even if you're purchasing it from an online retailer, purchase 2 sizes if you feel like you might be kind of on the fence about them. As for the actual fit, I've talked about this in other shoes before, particularly some of the Mizuno line. You know, having a shoe like the Zante that you may be in love with and you kind of like that shoe, and then having a shoe that is such a close counterpart like the Fresh Foam Gobi is a huge advantage for a lot of people. This means that you can run in a road shoe that you're really comfortable with, you know exactly how the fit and the feel is, particularly since we're talking about the fit, then you can get into a shoe like this and you know what you're in for. You know what you're going to be getting in terms of fit and ride and other aspects of the shoe. The rear foot is nice. I really do appreciate the added rigidity to the heel counter here. It does a good job even on off camber and more technical terrain, which, as I mentioned earlier, this shoe isn't really built for technical terrain, but if you want to take it on that type of stuff, The fit, both in the heel counter, that security that the added rigidity provides, as well as the phantom fit right here through the midfoot and their booty construction, which isn't actually booty construction. It's actually really great on the foot and does quite well, in my opinion, on trails like that. Although again, because there's no rock plate and it's a bit more shoe meant for groom trails and things like that, that's not necessarily where you're going to find it. As for the toe box, this is something that's kind of been an ongoing evolution for New Balance. We touched on it in some of the earlier Fresh Foam shoes when they first came out, which were not the Zante, but the line before that, you know, like the 980 and stuff like that. But when we were looking at those shoes, the toes were getting very pointy. So we're going to talk about the toe box just a little bit. First, across the metatarsals, exactly as with the Zante, the fit is really, really great. Across the metatarsal head, there's no problem. It's very comfortable. The foot has room to spread and things like that. As you get into toe, and this is partially visual, I will say, it's just the optics of the thing. Particularly if you take this off, you'll notice that it doesn't look quite as pointy as you might think. It doesn't feel pinched at all. My foot did not feel pinched in there. I don't have a wide foot, but I also don't have a narrow foot, so I was very comfortable in this. The only time when I felt myself getting kind of a little bit cramped up in here was on some kind of ripper descents where I was really flying downhill. Well, flying for me, going downhill pretty fast, and in those cases I would notice a little bit of that slide just by virtue of the fact that I was going downhill pretty fast, and I felt like a little bit of less room up there. As we get into the ride of this shoe, let me remind you that the New Balance Zante, especially version 2, is one of my favorite riding shoes of the past couple of years, and this is one of the places where this is the most evident. On groom trails, on some of those roads that you might want to do, since this is a hybrid shoe, you really feel a lot of similarity, like almost all similarity in the ride to the New Balance Fresh Foam Zante. Just to give you a little bit of perspective, this does come in at 9.8 ounces in my men's size 11. Not super light, but also not super heavy. Now on trails, I want to be very clear that this thing flies. It's very comfortable there. It goes fast. It's really fun. It's bouncy. It's a lot like the Zante. However, when we get to technical trails, it may be disappointing for you if you're expecting it to be a trail beater that you can just take out and run over rocks and roots and things like that. Now, if you don't mind having your feet really feel everything underfoot because there's no rock plate in this and the nature of the foam is such that you're really going to feel a lot, then fine, go for it. However, I want to be very clear, this is not a knock on this shoe. I do not think that this shoe is meant for technical trails like that, nor is it advertised as such. This is a shoe that is comfortable on roads, obviously, because they call it a hybrid shoe, but also on those smooth groomers paths and fire roads, and it's really going to shine on some single track, even single track that is on more ascendy, climby trail, you know, things like we have here in Colorado that just aren't super rocky. I didn't really do too much in this shoe on road. There were a couple transitional areas where I was going from the car to the road, or a couple times when I was on a trail and then came off, went to the car and just ran a little bit of circle on road just to be able to talk to you guys about it. For me, it's not something that I would take on the road a lot, mainly number one because I have so many shoes to review that it doesn't really matter that I take it on road so much. But if you're looking for a transitional shoe, something that's going to take you from your house down a sidewalk to a path or trail or something like that, this might be a great option for that. For me, I'm probably going to keep it off roads because I find that while rocks and things like that can be rougher on the general wear of the shoe, roads can be some of the most abrasive things that you're going to throw at the bottom of this and might wear it a little more quickly than you might want to see. Looking for one shoe, kind of that one shoe quiver for shoes that are going to be able to handle multiple different situations is something that a lot of people do. Now, for me, I have shoes for separate applications. For instance, if I'm going up a wet, more technical trail, I might wear something like the Salomon Speedcross Pro or something like that. This is not going to be your one shoe quiver, I don't think, because it's going to be ready to go fast on groomers, single track, things like that. But when you come into more technical trails, more technical applications, you're going to want something that's got a little more beefy of a lug, an actual sharper lug, and also something that's just a little more attuned to that, with a rock plate perhaps, or something like that. The final thing I'm going to mention about this is something that we've touched on here in the past few reviews, and that is because there's been an overall increase in pricing across the shoe industry that I think I've noticed. I have to give massive, huge props to New Balance on this guy, because this shoe right here comes in at $94.99, $95 for a really very solid shoe. Yes, it's not your technical trail shoe, but again, since we've seen prices prices creeping up and creeping up and creeping up. Coming in at $95 is very impressive, and if you really like the Zante, well worth dropping the cash on to put it in your arsenal. Now guys, before I give you the question today, please subscribe to our channel. This is a huge part of supporting Gearist, and it means so much to us if you would do that, and you can do so by clicking that button right up there. That would mean a lot. And please share our channel with your friends. Just copy youtube.com/Gearist or /thegearist onto your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever you want. And once again, take a picture of me doing this and post it to your Instagram. We would love to see that, by the way, using the hashtag I'm a Gearist. Now my question of the day for you guys is exactly what I kind of posed at the end there, and that is, do you look for a one shoe quiver, or do you get shoes that are more geared towards specific applications? For instance, would you have something like the Fresh Foam Gobi for those smooth single track trails and paths and things like that, as well as something that's more cleated and ready to go up hills and handle rocky stuff and all that kind of stuff? Let us know your answers down in the comment section below. Guys, thanks so much for spending a few minutes with us today. If you've got any questions at all, don't hesitate to either leave a message down in the comment section below or email info@gearist.com. As always, please follow us on all of our social media outlets, which you can see right over here, including subscribing to our YouTube channel, which you can see right down there. It means the world. Helps support what we are doing, trying to educate you guys, get you in the right gear to get out there and spend your time outside. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you next time.